What happens when a Hollywood leading man, known for his guarded silence and carefully measured public persona, walks onto a live daytime talk show famous for sharp opinions, unscripted moments, and hosts who don't back down? What happens when the questions stop being friendly, the smiles start to strain, and the air between guest and host turns uncomfortably tight? Before this story unfolds, make sure you subscribe to the Narration show, hit that like button, and drop a comment right now, because moments like this are why live television can still shock the world. The studio lights glow warm, almost deceptively comforting, as Ben Affleck steps onto the set of The View. The applause swells, polite but enthusiastic, the kind reserved for a man whose face is familiar in every corner of pop culture. He waves, that half-smile fixed in place, the practiced ease of someone who has walked red carpets and stood beneath flashbulbs his entire adult life. On the surface, everything looks smooth. The couches are bright, the mugs are lined up, the audience leans forward with anticipation. This is supposed to be an easy stop on a promotional tour. A few jokes, a few reflections on his latest project, maybe a thoughtful comment or two about life, growth, and moving forward. But live television has its own heartbeat. And today, it's beating just a little faster. Ben settles into his seat, crossing one leg over the other, hands folding loosely in his lap. He glances around the table, exchanging greetings. Whoopi's calm authority fills the space. Sunny offers a polite nod. Then there's Joy Behar, leaning slightly forward, eyes sharp with curiosity and something else, an eagerness that feels less like admiration and more like readiness. At first, the conversation drifts comfortably. Ben talks about filmmaking, about how directing forces him to confront his own flaws, about how age has changed his perspective. The audience chuckles at the right moments. Joy smiles, nodding along, tossing in a quick joke that earns a ripple of laughter. Ben relaxes a fraction. His shoulders drop. This is fine, he seems to think. This is manageable. Then Joy shifts. So, Ben, she says, tilting her head, her voice light but edged with intent. You've spoken a lot about accountability lately. About owning your mistakes. Do you think Hollywood men like you really get held accountable? Or do you think you get a pass? The room changes. Not dramatically, not yet, but subtly. Ben's smile stiffens. He inhales, just a little deeper than before. The audience murmurs softly, sensing the pivot. I think accountability is complicated, Ben begins carefully. It's personal. It's public. And it's not always fair, but... Joy interrupts, not harshly, but decisively. But you've had second chances most people never get. Do you recognize that privilege? There it is. The word hangs in the air like smoke. Ben nods slowly. Of course I recognize that I've been fortunate, he says. I don't deny that. But I also think reducing people to symbols can erase the work they've done to change. Joy's eyebrows lift. Change according to who, though? You. Your fans. Or the people affected by the culture you represent. The audience reacts now, an audible intake of breath, a few scattered claps, a low hum of tension. Ben shifts in his seat. He uncrosses his legs, then crosses them again, a small physical tell that betrays his discomfort. I'm not trying to represent a culture, he says, his voice firmer. I'm trying to be a human being who's made mistakes and learned from them. Joy leans back slightly, arms folding. But when you're famous, Ben, you don't get to just be a human being. You're an example whether you like it or not. For a split second, Ben's jaw tightens. The camera catches it. Millions at home will rewind that moment later, freeze frame it, analyze it. He exhales through his nose, choosing his words with visible care. I don't think it's fair to demand perfection from anyone, he says. Especially when growth is messy and public shame doesn't actually help people become better. Joy tilts her head again, this time less playful. So are you saying criticism is the problem? Not behavior. The tension thickens, pressing against the studio walls. Whoopi glances between them, sensing the escalation but allowing it to breathe. This is live. This is real. This is what people tune in for. No, Ben replies, a hint of frustration creeping into his tone. I'm saying context matters. Nuance matters. And sometimes the conversation turns into a performance instead of a path forward. The audience splits, some applause, some silence. Joy's lips press together. She nods once, slowly. Well, she says, some would argue that what you call performance is just accountability you don't like. The words land heavier than intended. Ben looks down for a moment, then back up. His eyes are steady now, but there's an edge there, something raw. I've sat with consequences, he says quietly. I've lost things. I've faced myself in ways that don't make headlines. And I don't think dismissing that helps anyone. For the first time, the studio feels almost too small for the conversation unfolding inside it. The audience is silent, hanging on every word. Joy studies him, then lets out a short breath. I'm not dismissing your pain, she says. I'm questioning the system that cushions it. Ben nods, slowly, as if acknowledging a point he doesn't entirely accept. And I'm questioning whether public shaming is really the solution people think it is. The camera pulls back slightly, capturing the entire table now. The smiles are gone. This isn't banter anymore. This is a collision of perspectives, happening in real time, with no script to soften the edges. Somewhere in the control room, a producer grips a clipboard a little tighter. Somewhere in the audience, a woman shakes her head. Somewhere at home, a viewer leans closer to the screen, sensing that this is only the beginning, that the awkwardness, the tension, the unspoken emotions are about to spill into something far more uncomfortable. And as the applause flickers uncertainly, one thing becomes clear. This interview has gone off the rails, and there's no cutting to commercial fast enough to stop what's coming next. The applause fades unevenly, like rain tapering off after a sudden storm. Ben Affleck sits back, but the tension doesn't leave his body. It settles deeper, into his shoulders, into the careful stillness of his hands. Joy Behar adjusts in her chair, uncrossing and recrossing her legs, her expression unreadable now. No smile, no smirk, just focus. The audience senses it too. This isn't over. Not even close. Whoopi clears her throat gently, attempting to steer the conversation. All right, she says, voice calm but alert. Let's take a breath here. These are important conversations, but... Joy lifts a hand slightly, not cutting Whoopi off, but signaling she isn't done. I just want to follow up, she says, eyes back on Ben. Because when you say public shaming, it sounds like you're talking about accountability as if it's an attack. Ben turns toward her fully now. His body language shifts, less defensive, more direct. I think accountability should lead somewhere, he replies. If it only exists to punish, then it becomes something else. Joy's lips curve faintly, not quite a smile. But who decides where it leads? People with power usually want the path that's most comfortable for them. A murmur ripples through the audience. Ben hears it. He always hears it. He pauses, choosing not to respond immediately. That pause alone feels loud. When I talk about growth, he finally says, I'm not asking for comfort. I'm talking about responsibility paired with humanity. Without that, we stop seeing people as capable of change. Joy leans forward again, elbows near the table. But you had resources, rehab, support, forgiveness from studios. Regular people don't get that. So when you talk about humanity, it can sound selective. The word lands like a quiet accusation. Ben swallows. His eyes flick briefly toward the audience, then back to Joy. I won't argue that I've had access others don't, he admits. That's true. But does that mean my effort is meaningless? That the work doesn't count? Joy responds instantly. No. But it means the consequences weren't the same. The studio feels heavier now, like the air itself has thickened. Sunny shifts in her seat, watching closely. Whoopi remains still, letting the exchange play out, knowing interrupting now would only fracture it further. I'm not comparing pain, Ben says, his voice firmer, the edges sharpening. I'm saying pain exists regardless. And dismissing someone's attempt to do better because they are successful doesn't help the larger issue. Joy raises an eyebrow. But dismissing criticism because it's uncomfortable doesn't help either. A beat. Another. Ben exhales slowly. This isn't about comfort, he insists. It's about effectiveness. If the goal is change, then the approach matters. The audience breaks into scattered applause. Some nod. Some don't. The division is visible, almost physical, slicing the room down the middle. Joy tilts her head, studying him like a lawyer watching a witness. So what's your solution, Ben? Because from where I'm sitting, it often looks like powerful men asking for patience while everyone else is asked for perfection. Ben's jaw tightens again, but this time he doesn't look away. My solution is listening, he says. Real listening. Not just reacting. Not reducing complex lives into sound bites. Joy lets out a short laugh, not cruel, but pointed. This is a talk show, she says. Sound bites are kind of our job. Laughter breaks out, nervous but real. Even Ben cracks a small smile, though it fades quickly. I get that, he replies. But those sound bites don't exist in a vacuum. They shape how people see others. They become weapons. Joy's expression hardens slightly. So now we're weaponizing conversation. Ben shakes his head. We're weaponizing outrage. That word, outrage, ignites something. The audience reacts audibly. A few claps. A few gasps. Joy straightens, shoulders squared. Outrage is often the result of harm, she says. People don't get outraged for no reason. I agree, Ben responds quickly. But outrage alone doesn't build anything. It just burns. The temperature in the room spikes. Whoopi finally interjects, her voice firm but measured. Okay, let's slow this down. Joy glances at Whoopi, then back at Ben. I just think, she says, voice quieter but more intense, that when men like you talk about being misunderstood, it can sound like you're centering yourself in conversations that aren't really about you. The silence that follows is sharp. Ben doesn't speak right away. He looks down at his hands, fingers interlaced, then looks back up. When he speaks, his tone is lower, more personal. I'm not trying to center myself, he says. I'm trying to explain myself. There's a difference. Joy shakes her head slowly. Sometimes there isn't. The audience reacts again, louder this time. The camera cuts briefly to faces, wide eyes, parted lips, people whispering to one another. This isn't just awkward anymore. It's confrontational. Ben leans forward now, mirroring Joy's posture. Then what's the alternative? He asks. Silence. Disappearing. Pretending growth isn't real. Joy meets his gaze without blinking. Listening without defending. Ben's mouth opens, then closes. For a moment, he seems genuinely caught off guard. The pause stretches. I've been listening, he says softly. For years. Joy responds just as softly, but with conviction. Then maybe listen to why people still aren't convinced. The words hang there, unresolved, heavy. Whoopi shifts, ready to redirect, but the energy has already shifted into something deeper, more personal than anyone anticipated. Ben nods slowly, as if absorbing a blow he didn't expect to feel on live television. The cameras roll on, capturing every micro-expression, every breath, every flicker of restraint. And somewhere beyond the studio walls, social media is already warming up, fingers hovering over screens, waiting to turn this moment into something much bigger than either of them intended. The silence that follows feels unnatural for daytime television. It stretches longer than anyone is comfortable with, long enough for the audience to shift in their seats, long enough for the cameras to linger just a beat too long on Ben Affleck's face. His expression isn't angry now. It's something more vulnerable, more complicated. A man realizing, in real time, that no amount of preparation can fully armor you against a conversation like this. Whoopi finally breaks the quiet. All right, she says gently, palms open as if trying to lower the temperature in the room. These are layered issues. Let's take a step back. But Joy doesn't look away from Ben. And Ben doesn't look away from Joy. I am listening, Ben repeats, slower this time. But listening doesn't mean I stop being a person in the conversation. Joy exhales, leaning back in her chair. No one's asking you to stop being a person, she replies. They're asking you to stop being the loudest one. The audience reacts immediately, an audible mix of applause and sharp inhales. The comment lands hard, not because it's shouted, but because it's calm. Controlled. Precise. Ben nods once, as if acknowledging the hit. Fair, he says. But silence from people with influence can also be interpreted as avoidance. Joy tilts her head. Or humility. Ben's lips press together. He looks momentarily toward Whoopi, then back to Joy. Humility doesn't mean erasing your voice, he says. It means using it responsibly. And who defines responsibly? Joy asks quickly. Ben hesitates. Just a fraction of a second. Enough for the audience to sense uncertainty. Hopefully, he says, all of us. Joy smiles faintly, but there's no warmth in it. That sounds nice, she says. But power dynamics don't work like that. The studio feels like it's holding its breath again. Sunny leans forward slightly now, eyes flicking between them, clearly invested. Whoopi remains composed, but her fingers tap once against her mug, an unconscious tell that she's aware this moment could spiral. Ben shifts in his seat, rolling his shoulders back. When he speaks again, there's a different energy in his voice. Less defensive. More exposed. I spent a long time thinking if I just stayed quiet, things would resolve themselves, he admits. They didn't. They got worse. So I started talking, not to excuse anything, but to acknowledge it. Joy watches him closely. And did that help? Ben nods. For me? Yes. Joy raises an eyebrow. And for everyone else? The question cuts. Ben's eyes flicker. He opens his mouth, then stops. The audience leans in collectively, sensing something shift. I don't know, he says honestly. I can't answer that for everyone. Joy softens, just slightly. That uncertainty, she says, is where listening should live. The applause this time is more unified. Ben nods slowly, absorbing it. For a brief moment, it feels like the confrontation might ease. Like they've reached some fragile middle ground. But live television doesn't thrive on fragile peace. Ben straightens again. I hear what you're saying, he says. I really do. But I also think there's a danger in permanently defining people by their worst moments. Joy's eyes narrow, not in anger, but in focus. And there's a danger, she responds, in letting people move on before the damage is fully reckoned with. Ben's voice tightens. Who decides when it's enough? Joy answers immediately. The people who were hurt. A hush falls over the room. That answer doesn't invite debate. It demands reflection. Ben looks down again, this time longer. When he looks back up, his eyes are glassier, though he blinks it away quickly. I don't disagree, he says quietly. But healing isn't linear. And it's not public for everyone. Joy nods. True. But your life is public. That's not something you can selectively opt out of. The audience murmurs. The tension isn't explosive now. It's simmering, deep and emotional. This is no longer a clash of egos. It's a collision of lived realities. Ben leans forward, elbows resting on his knees. Do you think there's a way for someone like me to speak without it being seen as self-centered? Joy pauses. The room waits. Yes, she says. By centering the impact, not the intention. Ben listens. Really listens. You can see it in the way his shoulders relax, just slightly. In the way his eyes don't deflect. I try to, he says. But intention still matters. Joy shrugs lightly. To you. The audience reacts again, soft laughter, mixed with applause. Ben lets out a short breath, almost a laugh himself, but it doesn't fully land. Then maybe that's where the disconnect is, he says. I'm trying to reconcile both. Joy leans back, folding her arms. And people watching are deciding whether that reconciliation feels genuine. The camera cuts briefly to the audience, faces intense, thoughtful, divided. Some nodding along with Ben. Others clearly siding with Joy. This moment has stopped being about a single celebrity or a single host. It's become a mirror. Whoopi finally steps in more firmly now. We're gonna have to wrap this part up, she says. But I think it's clear this isn't a simple conversation. Ben nods. No, it's not. Joy looks at him, her expression unreadable. But it's an important one. Ben meets her gaze. I agree. The segment moves toward its close, but the energy doesn't dissipate. It lingers, clinging to every word, every look. The cameras may soon cut to commercial, but the moment has already escaped the studio. Online, clips are being trimmed, captions drafted, opinions sharpened. Some will call Ben brave. Others will call him defensive. Some will praise Joy for holding the line. Others will accuse her of pushing too hard. And as the show edges toward its final moments, one thing is undeniable. This wasn't just awkward television. It was a raw, unscripted collision. One that neither Ben Affleck nor Joy Behar will be able to walk away from quietly. The cameras cut to commercial, but the tension doesn't vanish with the blinking red light. It lingers in the studio like static after a thunderclap. The audience exhales all at once, some whispering to each other, others staring straight ahead as if they've just witnessed something they weren't entirely prepared for. Ben Affleck shifts in his seat, running a hand briefly along his jaw. Joy Behar reaches for her mug, then pauses, setting it back down untouched. When the show returns, the smiles are back, but they are thinner now, carefully placed. The conversation moves on, but no one in the room pretends the moment didn't happen. Every laugh feels slightly delayed. Every transition feels forced. Ben answers the remaining questions politely, professionally, but something has changed. His voice is quieter, more guarded. The ease he walked in with is gone. As the credits roll and the applause swells one last time, Ben stands, shaking hands, thanking the hosts. He and Joy exchange a brief look, no hostility, no warmth either. Just understanding. The kind that comes from having collided head-on in front of millions. And then it's over. Or at least, It seems like it is. Within minutes, clips flood social media. Short, sharp edits isolate the most intense exchanges. Listen without defending. Public shaming doesn't build anything. The people who were hurt decide. Each line becomes a rallying cry, stripped of context, amplified by captions designed to inflame. Hashtags trend. Comment sections explode. Some viewers praise Ben, calling him introspective, brave, emotionally honest. They say he stayed calm under pressure, that he dared to speak about growth in a culture addicted to punishment. Others are less forgiving. They accuse him of centering himself, of intellectualizing accountability, of talking around harm instead of confronting it. Joy Behar becomes just as polarizing. Supporters applaud her for asking the hard questions, for refusing to soften the conversation, for representing voices they feel are often drowned out by celebrity sympathy. Critics accuse her of ambushing a guest, of pushing too far, of turning dialogue into confrontation. By nightfall, entertainment headlines multiply. Ben Affleck and Joy Behar clash on live TV. Awkward tension erupts on The View. A conversation that divided the audience. Body language experts weigh in. Commentators replay Ben's pauses, Joy's tone, Whoopi's careful restraint. Every second is dissected. Ben's team releases a brief statement, measured, neutral. He values open dialogue. He respects differing perspectives. He's committed to growth. Joy, for her part, addresses the moment on the next episode, standing by her questions while acknowledging the complexity of the discussion. She doesn't apologize. She doesn't escalate. She reframes it as necessary. Fans argue late into the night. Some say the exchange was uncomfortable but overdue. Others say it was unfair, a trap set in the guise of conversation. The divide deepens, not just about Ben Affleck or Joy Behar, but about how society handles accountability, redemption, and who gets to speak. And that's the real aftermath. Because long after the studio lights dim, the question remains unsettled. Can someone grow publicly without being permanently defined by their past? Can accountability exist without compassion, or compassion without consequence? There is no clear answer. Only perspectives. Only voices. Only moments like this, captured live, raw, and impossible to rewind without changing how they made you feel. Now it's your turn. Did Ben Affleck handle the confrontation with honesty and restraint, or did Joy Behar expose something uncomfortable that needed to be said out loud? Whose side are you on, or do you think the truth lives somewhere in between? Drop your opinion in the comments and let the conversation continue. And if you want more intense, cinematic, emotionally charged stories like this, moments where celebrity facades crack and live television turns unpredictable, subscribe to the Narration show right now. Like this video, share it with someone who loves real, unscripted drama, and stay with us, because the next explosive story is already waiting.